Welcome to the Calgary Sessions. I'm your host, Jeff Humphreys. This is episode number 20. Today's guest, him and I go back a long ways. So this will be a fun one. His perspective will be very interesting. His sport background is also very interesting. So I'll stop rambling. I'll let him introduce himself and what he does.
Hi, my name's Steve Wheatcroft, and I'm currently the CEO of Urban Life Solutions. People around Calgary probably see our trucks. So they have ULS on the sides, and we just went on a little bit of adventure with private equity. So things are changing with our company
Quickly.
Yeah, really quickly.
So ULS is that classic landscape truck you've seen around Calgary for how many years?
Oh, we started in original business plan. Actually, was written in 1988 at the University of Calgary. I was taking business there, and in 1989, I got sick of jumping out of helicopters, planting trees, and thought I'd stick around Calgary and try out the business plan with a few of my friends, and that was what we did. We launched. It was originally called University Lawn Services, actually. So that was the original name of the company, and we kind of fashioned it. We were going to be the next college pro painters, but we were going to do it with grass instead of paintbrushes. So we were really excited, and we had this great idea, and so we launched it in 1989.
Wild. Yeah. That was a good year. Flames won the cup.
That's right. Flames won the cup. My first child was born and launched ULS.
Oh, so it's a real year.
Yeah, I was like 23. Like in university, I had a year to go. I was trying to cut grass. I had a kid. I was playing hockey at UFC. I had a part-time job. And then I always remember being in Scurfield Hall, falling asleep in the cubicles, and I'd usually wake up in a pile of slobber. And I had a shirt that I'd wear to class in front of the profs because it pissed them off, and it said "C's get degrees" because I just wanted to get out of there. I didn't care. Like it was just a blur. Go in and out. It was a blur. Yeah.
Well, this is gonna be a fun conversation because we met later in life, obviously, and you were kind of already on this path. But it'll be fun to go back. I want you to go back in your childhood, sport career, education, family, wherever you want to go. Go to a point where the memories are still fairly intact and. Yeah, I just want to hear what kind of decisions you were making, what inspired you back then, whether it was all athletics. It doesn't sound like it was school. So go back to even where you grew up and how you grew up.
Yeah, wow, it's funny because I was born in Edmonton. So I always kind of feel like I escaped, and maybe it's not a good analogy with what's going on in the world today, but I escaped the concentration camp. I got out of Edmonton when I was 3 months old.
Oh, so early.
Yeah, early. And we went to Southern Ontario when my brother was born there, and then we moved back and was really a resident of Calgary from the time I was 3 years old onward. But fast forward, went to high school at Queenie. I guess then she gets all the recognition of being the big Queenie guy, but there's a sports Hall of Fame wall there. Yeah. I'm on it. So I don't think Nenchi's on there. He didn't seem like an athlete to me, but anyway.
What did you play in high school? Everything?
Well, I was playing high-level hockey, so it really restricted us. But really funny story was, we had a lot of good hockey players for some reason from Queenie, and guys that were playing for the Calgary Wranglers, playing junior all over, and we were all at Queenie going to school. So like our sports teams were horrible. So our football team had lost 71 straight games.
No way.
And all these good athletes were playing hockey. Couldn't do any of the school sports, playing AAA midget and all that. But in the later years of high school, we had a real cool coach there, Dan Richmond. He was played for the Toronto Argonauts. And he came to me and said, "Steve, can you get all the hockey guys to play rugby? Like we could actually be a good team if we could get all these guys out." So I was like, nah, hockey's over in April, and I don't want to play rugby. I just want to do nothing, right? And try to get caught up on school because I was usually struggling to get by. So anyway, what we did, we got everybody together to play rugby, and it was hilarious. So very first game, I'll never forget it. So we have to play St. Francis, and the year before they'd beat us 80-0 in rugby.
No way.
So I'm lining up, I look over there, and I'm like, oh my God, what's going on? Like these guys are way too big. And I remember it started off, and probably within the first 3 minutes, some guy threw an uppercut under the ruck and hit one of our guys. And I was playing standoff, and I stepped up and I punched this guy right in the front of the head as hard as I could, knocked him out cold. And anyway, we won the game 10-1.
No way.
It was just a grind it out. And these guys from St. Francis were choked. And I don't know if any of them remember back then, because I've talked to a few guys about that. And it was funny because that was We were the first time we believed we could actually win. And this coach came up to me and says, "You can't do this. You can't play like this." But he was the best coach I ever had of any sport. He pulled me and he goes, "But I love you, so just keep doing it." He knew it was wrong, but he's like, "This is the only way we're going to win." And it was funny because we won the city championship that year. First time Queenie, it was in 1983.
No
it was
way.
the first time they'd won a city championship, and I think in like 20 years in any sport. And but it was one of my, I played a lot of hockey, but I always remember back to that team about seeing the best guys, in their one specific area of expertise excelling and just pulling together. And it was the epitome of what a team was about.
Why was that coach so good? What was about him that just kind of resonates with you? Because you've had a lot of coaches.
I've had a lot of coaches, but it was like all of us didn't know what we were doing. So he wasn't a rugby guy; he was a football guy. And then we had all these hockey players, and then we had kind of the guys that were so used to getting their butts kicked, but it decided to, football guys or guys that played volleyball said, "No, we're gonna do this. We're gonna be on this rugby team." So it's such a mismatch. But I think it was just his ability to say, "We're only gonna win if we're just nut bars," and he just let us run amok.
Which that's up your alley.
Yeah, it's up my alley. And, today that would not be put up with. It would just be like, there's no way, you can't do this. You're done. You're off the team.
Yeah.
But this guy, he was the perfect at needling that little thing in every guy, right? We had one guy that could kick the ball farther than I've ever seen in my life. He's actually a good buddy of mine, high-end CFO here in Calgary. But this guy could kick the ball, so he's like, every time you get it, just kick it down because then they got to bring it all. So we played this rugby, but it was like no other rugby team. It was just like I don't even know if it was rugby. It was a mix of hockey and Aussie rules, and he just kind of like, masterminded this incredible group of guys that just wanted to win. And it was unbelievable.
Cool.
Yeah, it was fun.
So, and then school is not, you're just there? Are you like, are you accomplishing some things, or are you kind of just sliding by?
My mom and dad were really neat people. And when I was 16 and my brother was 14, they had started up a business and they had to go to Toronto to run it. So they sat us down, and parents nowadays would think this is crazy. I'm 16, my brother's 14. They're like, "Look, this is going to be good for the family. We got to go away to Toronto. You guys can stay in the house. You got to look after yourselves. Here's your money." My mom was a home ec teacher. So we learned how to cook, clean, make our beds. Like I was like, I could fix everybody's hockey equipment with dental floss. I had a super awesome backstitch. And so they left us and they went off to Toronto. So here's me and my brother.
What'd they start when they went there?
It was kind of like a stage show where they put on these fashion shows and they sold these products. And it actually turned out to be unbelievable to watch my mom and dad in this entrepreneurial setting make all this money. So, here's me and my brother, kind of just living on our own. And so we had this kind of real hands-off experience. And my mom and dad loved us. Nowadays, I'm so thankful for them doing that because here I was like 16. So we would ship all the products from our garage. So we had our own little business. My dad used it for a tax write-off, so he would pay us. So at 16 and 14, like my mom and dad didn't pay for nothing. Like my mom's like, "You got to buy your own toothpaste, your own toothbrushes,
No way.
Go shopping for our own clothes, buy our own hockey equipment." So, it was such a different upbringing.
Well, like difference, probably an understatement though.
Well, nowadays,
there's
I tell people this and they just think it's crazy.
Yeah.
Right? But it was so good to build, skills. And I think nowadays, you see that, some terms, helicopter parent, whatever, this over-parenting.
Yep.
And they don't let their kids fail. Well, here's me and Jimmy just like living in town on our own, doing whatever. And in hindsight, we were pretty good. There's obviously some backstories where we kind of went over the line. But the one thing my mom and dad always said is, my family was all entrepreneurial, and the theory in my family is don't go to university. It's a waste of time to start a business. My grandma and grandpa had their own business. All my uncles had their own business. My mom and dad. Well, my dad had an engineering degree from U of A, and my mom had a teacher's degree from the University of Alberta. So they were always like, everyone in the family says university's a waste of time.
That was a discussion?
That was a discussion.
That was like an open conversation that they were...
Yeah, open conversations. So my mom and dad said, but what we would like to see you do is go to university and then you can make your own decision whether it was useless. So my dad's tactic on this kind of hands-free parenting was, and same with my mom, was here's the rules. They were pretty simple. like no drugs, you can only have one pop a week.
Don't get arrested.
My mom was just, don't drink pop. It's gonna like wreck your life. And then my dad was like, and my dad, engineer, right? So he got right to the heart of it. Here's my dad's big rule is, you don't have a 70% average, your hockey skates are gone. And that in itself basically, made me and my brother, competent students, because we did whatever we could to get over 70. And that's why in university, the C's get degrees. But, we were probably like that 75 to 80. We weren't knocking the socks off.
But pretty good for, that environment by yourself and figuring all these things out.
Yeah. And so, we had that. And I always enjoyed school, but for me, it was like a means to an end. Like, how do I get done school so I can go to hockey practice? Or how can I get done school so I can go back to, we had a shop above our garage where we shipped out all this materials mom and dad were selling. So how do I get back to business, and how do I get to hockey practice? And I got to go to school, right?
I got to do this first so I can do everything else.
And I got to get a 70.
So when this business they started, was it random, or did they have it in Calgary and they needed to expand out east?
No, my mom and dad got offered the rights for all of Canada, so they took those on, and then it just, my dad, I remember dad saying, we're going to be so rich over this. I'm like, oh, whatever. Like, to me, it just seemed like weird.
Like random?
I was like 5 steps away from snake oil salesman. But, in hindsight, it just exploded. And then, they had the rights for all of Canada, so they just wanted to like take advantage of the market and try to build it out as quick as they could. And it was good. And it was funny because in the later years, my mom and dad ended up getting divorced, and then my mom still had the rights, and so she needed to make some money. So my mom reincarnated the business because we had like 2 years left on the licensing. And I did actually a full year where I went on the road with my mom and helped her.
Way.
Yeah, because she, I wanted her to make some money at the end, and she wanted me to come with her. So I got actually a chance to go and do like probably, I think it was 10 or 12 shows with my mom, which was fantastic.
Super cool.
Her. Yeah. 8 hours on the stage doing this stuff and taking people through this course and teaching them stuff. And it was neat to see from an entrepreneurial aspect, and also just, how many people get to work with their mom for a month,
Nobody.
Traveling around in a van.
No,
like,
it doesn't happen.
It was so cool. Yeah.
What's interesting when you say that, kind of the rights for Canada, like when they were going at that scale, we'll get to where you are now, but it's very interesting to hear the tie.
For sure.
Where both businesses ended up. So you graduate university, like got your 70?
Made it out of high school.
And what'd you get your degree in?
I was actually got a business degree from Haskayne School of Business.
Yep.
So, and back then it was actually second to Queen's. It's pretty hard to get into. So, I kind of took it a roundabout way there. I was in sports psychology first. So I think I'm 2 courses away from having a psychology degree. So.
No way.
But I like psychology, but I'm like, how do you make money with this, right? Like everybody I saw that a psychology degree was working at Totem stocking the shelves. So no offense to anybody that might be listening, but at the time, that's what you got, right?
That's where you ended up.
Yeah. So, so I got into business and worked my way through that, which it was a bit arduous when I had kids. I had kids already when I was in university. I was playing on the hockey team, taking business.
There's a lot going on.
Yeah, there was a lot going on.
So you're playing for the Dinos?
Yep. So I went from the AGHL, went to the Dinos. I actually had 2 scholarships to the NCAA, Wisconsin and Anchorage, to play for the Seawolves. So I accepted the one to Alaska because I had this big romantic at the time of going off to Alaska. And I knew some buddies that I played hockey with, Timmy Coleman and a few other guys that had played there. I talked to them. They said it's a great place to play. And, I was just about ready to go. And I said, hey, how do I transfer my classes from U of C? And they're like, how many have you taken? And they said, better not be 8 or more. And I said, I've taken 9. And they're like, oh, shoot.
You're not eligible.
You're ineligible to play in the NCAA for a year. So they were willing to give me a 3-year scholarship, but I had to play for year 1.
Yep.
So I went, it was $50,000 to go up there for 1 year. Crazy. Because of the travel schedule, right? Everything has to be shipped in. They have their own planes, so they fly teams in and they fly out who's going to go? Like North Dakota isn't going to fly up to Anchorage to play a game at there. So they had to pay for everything. So it was extremely expensive to go there. So I said, nah, I'm not going to go there. And then it was, I got offered a scholarship to Wisconsin, but it was Div 3, right? Because I could bypass NCAA that way.
Right.
And I had to pay for half my school. And then I got a call from George Kingston. I don't know if
he was the coach.
No way. I was a coach at the time. Yeah.
Crazy.
And
he's like, legendary kind of.
He's a legendary guy. I used to always say, hey, George, how come you look just like Gordon Lightfoot? And that was our big joke. I tease him relentlessly and sing Gordon Lightfoot songs at full blast at practice. Oh, you just piss him off. But I think he still loves me. So anyway, I said, George, I want to go away and have an experience of going away. Well, he's like, well, your mom and dad don't even live here, and you got the house. So, and my brother was going off to play in the Western Hockey League. So decided, I'm going to just play at U of C, and then started playing hockey there. And it was great because I had a Scholastic scholarship. Again, I joke around, but I was not a bad student. So I had a Scholastic scholarship, and I had a athletic scholarship.
Yep.
So I got a little bit more money than the standard U of C player at the time. So for me, I was putting money in my pocket. My mom and dad were wanting me to stay there, look after the house. So hunkered down, and I could walk to U of C from where I grew up in Briar Hill. So it was a great way to go to school and get through it. Yeah. And then, George moved on, and I played under Willie Desjardins, Mike Johnson, Drew Remenda, Terry Johnson.
Oh, you've had
Yeah, so my joke is all our coaches end up playing or going to the NHL, except none of the players, right?
Thanks, guys.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so it was fun.
So when you were growing up, you played a high level of sport.
Yeah.
Did you, you're hearing these conversations of your family, start your own business, do your own thing. You're playing at serious high level of sport.
Yeah.
Where's your head? Are you like, I want to be a pro hockey player, or I want to start my own business? Well,
I can remember almost, I wouldn't say to the day, but there's definitely a time there where I had a couple other opportunities to go play professional in Europe, and then also to go to an NHL camp and maybe go play in the American Hockey League. And again, my decisions were changed a little bit because I had kids at the time. And I just couldn't justify, most of the guys that were doing that, taking that risk, were kind of well, it's me.
Yeah.
So if it doesn't work out, it's going to affect one person. For me, it was I'm going to affect my wife at the time, my kids. And the money really was what I would call, enough money to be self-sufficient as a single guy, going to Europe, drinking beer, chasing girls, right?
Yeah.
But for a married guy with kids, the math didn't add up. So for me, it was, and I would imagine that a lot of athletes have that moment in life, is it worth rolling the dice, or is it time to change direction? And for me, and I don't regret my decision, because I also understand a lot of people, especially now, I'm in a rink, and because again, my nephew plays in the Western Hockey League, and they're talking about their kid making the NHL, and I just, I'm not there to damage dreams, but I take one step back and have a chuckle.
Yeah.
The difference between playing, college hockey or playing in the Western Hockey League and playing in the NHL, it's a quantum leap. And I knew what my role was, and I'd already had enough concussions, and you've seen me play hockey, Jeff.
A couple times.
I'm not really one of the guys that sit on the sidelines and
head first
and dish the puck off. But head first is So I just decided it was time to change direction and move forward with my business.
Did you make that decision halfway through university, at the end of university, or where was that or going in?
Yeah, it was probably right around in kind of that 1988, 89. And, I was kind of getting to the end of university and had a few offers and stuff like that. And, there was lots going on there, because you got to remember, I was living on campus on married student housing behind Lot 10. The Olympics were on. So I'm living right across the street from the speed skating domes there on the north side. And going to practice, and they used our UFC hockey team as guinea pigs. So we were playing all the Olympic teams, right? And people didn't know this. So in the afternoons, and they didn't publicize it or put it on TV, because for some of these teams, they're going to be in the Olympics, and here we are beating them 8-1. Whipping them. That was one of the best hockey teams I ever played on, is 89 and 1990 at UFC. 1990, we went to nationals, and we were ranked number 1. And that was probably the most skilled team I'd ever played for. Even one of the years there, we played the team that won the World Juniors, and we kicked their butt at Father Bauer. And it was you need to keep it on the down low. And it was a good hockey team, good players there, right?
Crazy.
Yeah, so it was neat.
So when you finish university,
Yeah,
kind of hockey's, you're done, you've made a decision,
yeah.
and now you spin up this ULS right away?
Well, I was still going to school when ULS started. So in '89, I had another year left. So we kind of started it that April. It was a way to make some money.
Summertime cash?
Yep, summertime cash. We did it. And we kind of wound it down. We didn't do snow removal in 1989.
One truck? You and somebody? A couple of mowers?
There's 4 of us. So
Yep.
it was kind of like me and my best friend and my brother and his best friend. And we had kind of a power washing business that we morphed in there. We had a couple mowers, and we had these lawn spraying franchises out of Lethbridge, which is another story. And, Jim and Ross had the same thing, but they added lawn cutting.
Yep.
And then that first summer of '89, we had these two groups doing this.
Yep.
And then the following year I graduated, and then I kind of got offered quite a few jobs downtown to go work for different accounting firms.
Yep.
And the funny part is I wasn't an accountant. That was my worst thing. And I don't why do you guys want me to come work there? And you can play left wing. We'll figure that out later. It was like to play on the accounting hockey team for, Deloitte or whatever. Yeah. That was one of them. It was hilarious. And I'm like, yeah, no, whatever. And, it was like I had done so much stuff, and I just felt like putting on a suit was just going to kill me.
Yep.
I got nothing against dressing up, but put a tie around my neck every day. I couldn't do it, and I just felt like I needed to be outside, and with the stress of what I was going through, personally, with having kids so young and going through that, I just need to be outside.
Yep.
It was just weird. Like I just wanted to touch grass and be dirty.
And in '89, it was literally like April, shut it down September.
Yeah.
And
so
then,
in '89, I shut it down. Well, I had to do like the fall cleanups.
Yeah.
And so I was kind of,
I'd
get my classes done, run out, get stuff done. I knew I just had to make it to get this stuff done. And we kind of wrapped everything up mid-October. And then it was shut down. And then in 1990, I got out. I'm going to do it full speed. And then my one buddy got a job downtown, Paul Battistella. So now he's Battistella Development. So you know him, right? So he's done his own success. So he left. And then Jimmy and Ross were like, hey, Stevie, you keep it running all year and we'll come back in the summer and make 25 grand for working 4 months. And everybody else back then, if you got $8.50 an hour, you were kicking it, right? That was about 5,000. So they're making like 20 or 25 grand. So they thought it was great. And then they'd go back to school. Well, that happened till 92. And then they both got offered pro hockey contracts. And I had turned mine down to run the business. Now these guys are like, yeah, Steve, why don't you just keep running and we'll come back and help you in April. And they run off to Germany. So Ross goes to play for Garmisch Park.
No way.
Jimmy plays for the Solring Knife Factory. He had the knives from the Henkel Knife Factory all over his jersey. Like he looked like he looked like he was working for a butcher shop. But anyway, so again, I'm cranking it away. And then I'll never forget it. It was like in 93, they're both over there. And I said, I phoned them up. Long distance, on the phone, the old way you had to do it back then. I said, guys, when you get back, you're either in or out. I'm buying you out. And, Ross found out that his wife was having a kid. He's like, I'm coming back. Let's get this going. And my brother's like, this is too much. I can't do it. I want to get bought out. So I always say that was my best stock buy of my life. So
for sure.
And then Jimmy left in 93, and then me and Ross ran it all the way to 2012. And I bought Ross out in 2012 and then went from there.
So were you at that first year when you decided you're all in? It's 12 months a year. So did you add snow removal? And
1990, I had no money coming in. So, I kind of set up a new platform on how I wanted to sell it. So I got these kind of guaranteed contracts, and that allowed me to have another job because I was like, now I had, 2 kids, trying to pay for a mortgage.
Yep.
And I was deal with my employer was if it snows, I don't come to work. And if it doesn't snow, I'll be there and help you out. And the guy's like, well, you're a great worker. I don't care. Do what you got to do. So I had these 2 jobs, and I'd get up and look out the window, and I'm going to go build steam units. I was building steam units for steam baths and boiler systems.
Factory stuff.
Yeah. Well, it was kind of a small shop, and it was my uncle had started it, and then it was one of my cousins running it. So I just went down there and learned how to do all this aluminum welding.
Yep.
Yeah, electrocuted myself and burnt myself more than I'd want to admit to it. But and I was on the low end of the production line for sure. And then it was snowing out. I would just go and shovel snow.
That was the balance. And then come summertime, you're full time.
Yeah, full time.
Because there's lawns and all the maintenance on that side.
Yeah.
And you did that for how many years? How many years did you have that 2 jobs in the winter?
Oh, that was just the very first winter. And then after that, I was just all in.
And your move to go after those kind of guaranteed contracts, how'd you say it?
Yeah, it was just like a flat fee contract where, people would pay whether it snowed or not. Because all I thought is like, I needed revenue coming in. And when you got to feed your family and stuff, you didn't want to take the risk, right? So I de-risked the contracts in my favor. It was still fair for the clients. I mean, my pricing was good. So it was a good launch into the snow kind of world of snow and ice management, as we call it now.
And were you going after residential, or were you kind of doing commercial? I
was doing mostly residential and a little bit of commercial. And then, as the years evolved, now all we provide now is commercial services. We don't interact with the residential market anymore.
So these early years are really interesting to me, just, because I understand where you are right now, which is mind altering. But the early years, are you adding 1 truck a year kind of thing? Is it how many crews do you get? Like, what's the scale look like from the early 90s when you're kind of doing your own thing, the boys are playing hockey?
So when we first started off, it was like we had 1 truck. My grandpa gave me a truck and he said, you can have it. And if you're in business next year, you give me $500 for it. It was a 1967 GMC blue 3 on the tree.
Awesome.
So, we wanted all the trucks to be the same color. So the next year we actually spray painted it. All our trucks with spray paint. We bought a Canadian Tire. So our theory was we're going to re-spray paint the trucks every year. And it was just brutal.
You hand bombed the entire truck?
The whole fleet.
You tape off the windows? And
barely. We kind of got good and we would just hold cardboard. And if we sprayed on the windows, we'd take a razor blade. Because our theory was from 20 feet away, no one's going to know that as long as we paint them every year. So it was this quick paint job. So
different colors, same colors?
We eventually went to all white, but I had this blue 67 3 on the tree GMC. So that next year, the first year my grandpa gave me the truck, was our first truck. Next year I said, yeah, I'm buying it. I'm still in business. So I gave Gramps $500. And then 2 weeks later, I flipped it for $4,700 because it was a collector's truck.
No way.
So my grandpa, I thought was going to be pissed, right? He phones me up and he goes, you bugger. That's a great business move. Congratulations. You took me, right? So here's my grandpa thought it was awesome that I needled him for $4,000.
What did he do? Did he have his own business too?
Oh, he was a heavy duty mechanic in Blairmore, Alberta. Yeah. Yeah. Just a big bear of a guy. Right. And,
awesome.
His wrists were the size of my ankles. And, he was a character and, everywhere from, he'd done some stints of pro wrestling and everything. Just a prototypical grandpa that nowadays couldn't exist because he would be locked up or muzzled.
So funny.
Yeah, he was a character. All my friends that have ever met him just shake their head.
He's that guy.
Yeah.
So got a truck. Buy it second year.
Yeah.
Then where's this thing go?
And then it just starts growing, and at the start it was like
1 crew. It's just you and somebody.
Well, no, we really started. So it was at the very first there was 4 of us, so we all took a crew, right? And so I'd have a crew, Jimmy had a crew, Ross had a crew. So we had 3 crews, and we just kind of started conscripting athletes, and it was such a great place to take workers from because they were all these hard worker, blue collar, gritty guys and ladies. And we even had the women's Olympic team one year worked with us. And Wally Kozak said, if you cut lawns all day for Stevie, you don't have to do cardio. So, we had 4 or 5, maybe even 8 awesome women working for us. We're talking, Wally Kozak. And everybody was in great shape and everybody just wanted to work hard. And it's we don't get hardly any hockey players. We get the odd one or odd athletes, but now it's I can't work because I have to train all summer.
Yeah, 12 months a year.
And we're we had, kind of the epitome at ULS, I think we had 45 NCAA and WHL hockey players playing there.
No way.
Yeah. It was crazy.
They just knew.
Yeah.
Once the word got out that ULS was hockey-centric
or whatever. Jason Smith for the Oilers, captain of Oilers, he worked for us. And, Craig Adams from Pittsburgh Penguins worked for us. Paul Gaban and AHL, American pro guys from Europe would come back and work for us. And
what was it? What was besides you being a hockey guy and being the dyno thing starts? What is it? Why do they track you down? Just word gets out.
Word got out, and it was all hockey. Jimmy played for the Canucks and Wranglers, and I played for the Calgary Canucks. And Ross played for the Calgary Canucks, and Paul played for the Calgary Spurs, and it was just kind of this epicenter to start. And then I played rugby, so I was connected with that. And Paul played high level football, and had a scholarship with the Dinos, and so we just kept tapping into these groups of athletes, and you know, it was such a good breeding ground for top level kind of not only people but just like, you know, I always liken fitness, like, you know, funny now, I always say to people, like, you know, we have to pay above minimum wage, obviously, to get people to landscape now. But I always say too, you get a fitness program for free, right?
Yeah,
like
totally.
you come and do this for a year, and your body changes. Like you're not gonna. There's not a lot of overweight people working at ULS because it's physically demanding work, right? So these athletes just excelled, and
that was that was how you started scaling. So it was like literally every year you just like add a crew?
we just started buying trucks, and it was like, buy a blue GMC and buy a green Ford and then spray them white with, you know, whatever it was.
Did you stencil on ULS? What'd you do? Or was it?
Well, we did. We had on the back on the plywood, we had ULS stenciled on for a while. And then we kind of got more modern and got like actually a logo and a decal. And we put that over. It was great for hiding like where the doors were completely rusted out. We'd span over the holes. And so, yeah. And then, you know, obviously the business became much more, you know, entrenched in a little bit more high level. So then we started to analyze, you know, what was the best way to do this. And then we started.
How long did it take to get to that point? How long were you kind of?
Well, you know, it took us 10 years to get to $1 million in sales. And I always talk to people that have businesses, and they're like, oh, you know, like, I'm going to do 5 million next year. I'm going to do this.
Yeah.
And, you know, this is not how businesses are built, really. Yeah. Like, usually, you know, you got to take a lot of kicks to the teeth for a lot of years just to kind of build the momentum. And then there's the, you know, I always call it the desert, where you got to walk through the desert. So it's like where every day you get up and you're slowly like running out of water and dying. And you're like, do I keep walking or do I give up? And let the buzzards come?
You had those?
Oh, you know, everybody has that, I think.
It took you.
So then, you know, in 10 years
we get to $1 million.
Yeah. And we hit that, you know, we kind of went over and we got the revenue over $1 million. And then it just exploded. And I think it would have been in 97 or 98, we bought a company called Terra Green. And that was where we, you know, ULS was maybe about 26, 27 trucks. And the Terra Green was about 28 trucks. And we mashed them together. And that was the first time that, you know, I ever experienced, you know, am I going to be in business next week?
No way.
Yeah, because we almost went bankrupt.
Leading up to that, for getting to $1 million, you know, 10 years, and you're still having you still had desert moments.
Oh, for sure.
You just, whatever. There's months in these years you're just like, where's this going? How am I going to keep it together?
Yeah.
But when you bought the two together, you almost went bankrupt. That was the closest.
We originally had tapped into financing through Business Development Bank, BDC. So we were getting like student kind of like subsidy loans.
Yep.
So, and that was good to start off with. And then we took our first big swing at like, you know, leverage financing when we went with BDC. And, I work with all different banks now, and I find everybody's got their specialty, and I understand how banks work. But, you know, we got our loans called by BDC. So here we are. You know, we had just built a new facility over by Road King, and they called our loans. So here I am the first time, I'm like, we're screwed. Like, we're going down. So I went into BDC, and, you know, I've always been good. Some people call me Houdini, but we sat down, and I worked out a deal with BDC of how I could manage my way out of it. And I think that's like a big mistake a lot of business people do, is that they look at banks as the enemy. Banks should be your best friend until they're not, and then dig in. But, you know, my plan was always to, and I still do this to this day, like, your banker should be your friend. You should be telling them what's going on. You should be like ahead of the curve. So if you see rough waters coming in, just tell them, you know, come with a plan, come with a strategy, come with the numbers down on paper. And nobody wants to call loans. There's a lot of work to shut down a business, right? So they can keep you solvent and keep things moving along. So that was my first, you know, brush with, you know, I guess you'd call it like the grim reaper of business, right? He's the sickle at the door.
Yeah, just waiting for you.
You're done. I got you. And man, it was a gut churning time. But the idea that the acquisition piece, again, it's going to tie into what's going on now. But did you see that as the only way to grow, or was that the quickest way to grow? Versus, you know, you're at 26, they got 28, put them together, you got a big number. Were you? Yeah. Well, you know, back then it was just unbridled passion and it was just foolishness. Like, we just said, hey, like, we're going to get this. And Terra Green had it was owned by some firefighters, and they wanted to get out of it. But they had the contracts for all of Point McKay. So now here's this big chunk of work. And, you know, it was almost like, let's just do it. It's going to be fun. You know, honestly, like there wasn't much thought into it. It's just like, this is crazy. Let's buy this on April 15th when everything's going to, explode.
The season's here.
Yeah. And we just moved into a new facility, right sized for 30 vehicles, let's say. And now all of a sudden we double in size. And now within 6 months, the new facility is outdated and we can't fit the trucks on the site. So it was crazy.
So I've had this chat with a couple of other athletes. Yeah. And the decision, you say it's foolishness, but do you think it's also just being a high performer and understanding that, when you can do things. Once you set your mind to it, you can just do things. There might not be, from the outside looking in, it might look crazy and a little. Yeah. But as a performer, and it's not that you have achieved at every step, but you know that you can be successful. Is it that where the foolishness comes from? Like, is it just in you, or are you just a crazy businessman?
Well, I think sometimes, I don't know what drives most people, but, sometimes it's fun to push yourself a little bit, whether that's in sports or in business. So you're always kind of looking for that next rush of, wow, that's like excitement to my life. Yep. And everybody needs a certain amount of that. And I think entrepreneurs need more. So it's kind of like, the heroin needles run out. So now I need a bigger heroin needle. And whether that's, acquiring more businesses or pushing things to a different level, I think it assimilates differently in different people. But for me, it was just kind of like, I'm going to keep growing this. I always say to people, if you can't, and this is where visualization comes in. People talk about it in sports all the time, but it's in business too. If you sit there and you can't see yourself at the next step, then you shouldn't go there. Like, you should see it before you go there. Like, you sit there, and if you're a 100-person company and you can't visualize in your mind what a 300-person company looks like, then you shouldn't be trying to get there. There's enough course corrections and craziness along the way without being able to see it, right? Yep. So it's like, it's like shooting an archery arrow when you can't see the target. Like, it's just blind ass luck if you ever hit it. But you can at least see that target in the distance. Then I think most people, if they really want to have it and they can really get it and they really want to go for it, it'll happen, right? And if I was never one to give up.
Did you have a number in your head? So when you're at 26 trucks, whatever the number was, and these guys have 28. Yeah. Did you have a number in your head that you wanted to get to on your side before you bought them? Like, were you on the path to 100 trucks and this was going to get you 28 now?
No, I always quantified it as like, well, I want to be the biggest company in Calgary. Yeah. And then we want to be the biggest company that supplies these type of services in Alberta. But once we were the biggest in Calgary, we were the biggest in Alberta. Yeah. We'd already passed that. And we want to be the biggest in Western. Oh, we're already that. As soon as we were the biggest in Calgary, we were the biggest in Western Canada. Yeah. And then,
that was a statement, though? That was an internal statement, you would say, as a driving light for you?
Yeah, I'd always say, because we often got ridiculed because one of our first shops was beside Arns Equipment. And so all the big landscape companies would come in, and we had all the hockey guys on Friday. We had this tradition. You couldn't do it now, but it was Pilsner. And our idea was over the whole summer, we wanted to build a wall between Arns Equipment and my uncle's shop out of Pilsner beer cases. Awesome. So we'd have 45 hockey guys and ladies. Some of the girls drank more beer than we did. And we would drink beer. And then we'd take the cases and we duct tape them together. And we started to build this great wall of Pilsner beer between the two facilities. And we always got bugged by, most of the companies that bugged us don't exist anymore in Calgary. There were guys that, thought that, they were quite the boys. So, but we weren't. We kind of laughed that off, right? Yeah.
But you made these decisions. Like, you're like, I want to be the biggest. Yeah. Out loud? Or was it more internal? Like, who do you tell these?
Well, between the people that were ownership at the time and with the upper management. We hired Ken Ruddock, and Kenny, I don't know if you know Kenny. And
I know the name.
Yeah, he's a great guy. He grew up in Haysboro, and he played for the Buffs, and then he went off and played at St. Lawrence University. And we hired him when he came back, and I said, take 1 year off, go play pro hockey. I want to play pro hockey. Anyway, and then he came back, and, those type of people that have been with us for 25 plus years, at the start, we'd sit around and say, yeah, we're going to do this. Just keep going, right? And, never thought about, grabbing the business and saying, okay, it's big enough, let's just get better.
Yep.
And that was probably, when I think back in the times that I almost went bankrupt, those were times when, maybe I wish it was a little bit more controlled, and I would have had the ability at the time to say, okay, this is enough now, let's work on systems, but it was just always like pedal to the metal.
That's your style.
Well, it was at the time. Yeah, things have changed, but yeah, it definitely was at the time. And I think as you get older, you start to be a little bit more mindful in what you're doing, whether that's with, relationships, with businesses, with everything, right?
Yeah.
I go nice now, and I'd rather give my guy a hug than slash him.
Yeah, totally.
Right?
It's way easier.
It's way easier, yeah.
So once you bought that other company, how back to the scale question, like where's the next blip for ULS?
Yeah, and then we cut a deal actually with an oil and gas company, and moved in with them. And they were actually a pipe company. So the deal was like, they'll help finance a new facility, and we'll move in and share it, and we'll also run their pipe yard. So here we are, like doing landscape service, and some of our employees are actually cutting pipe and running a pipe yard, which was crazy.
And this is years into the business, right?
Yeah.
ULS has been around for a while now.
Yeah, that would have been about 2000 or so,
And you're still doing something kind of like off the beaten path.
Yeah, and
like
we were right across from Race City Speedway, and we built this big facility with these guys, and me and Ross we helped general it, and we got this thing built, and then we're running a pipe yard. It was crazy times, and so they were upstairs and we were downstairs, and it was crazy. Company was owned by Dan LaPont. Dave Sapungis was up there.
No way.
A bunch of other people, and they were owned by a couple guys that were guards for the Miami Dolphins. So there's all these other stories. Definitely not podcast material. And we were the landscapers downstairs, and then we worked away, and then Continental got bought out by another U.S. company. And then they basically said, you got to get out of the building. So then we had to relocate, and that would have been in 2004, 2005. We built our own facility out in Rocky View.
Okay.
And then we had to move again. So
because you outgrew it?
Yeah, we had to outgrew it. Plus the oil, the pipe company wanted us out too.
Gotcha.
Yeah, so it was a mutual exit on that.
Yep.
But then we moved to this new facility. It was in 2004, 2005. We generaled the building, built it ourselves, their staff. We were there. We were there for a while, and then in 2017 we moved again. So I think by the time we started out of somebody's house, and then we moved to a shot. I think we're on our 6th facility now that we've been in. Do
you like the idea of owning your own facilities? Do you the first couple were partnered, and now?
Yeah, I own one along the way, and now we pretty well lease everything. Yeah, so we're just leasing, and you have to decide. I think depending on the scale of the business, right? And it comes down to, how do you want to build equity? But you got to remember, we're in the business of, doing landscape services or outdoor property services. Most of our CapEx is spent on equipment. So when you all of a sudden you're carrying, debt on a building, it's a lot of money to tie up in your facility. And we would rather put it in equipment now. So that's just a decision.
So when did it change from residential focus to bigger projects?
Yeah, that probably was only probably in about 2016, 2017.
Oh, so it's still pretty
newish, fresh. Yeah, and we'd done a lot, and we had some great residential customers. I'm not kidding you. Like I was in tears, like writing the letter, like, oh, you've been with us 23 years, and it was like a lot of seniors and a lot of long-term clients we had in Elbow Park and Mount Royal.
Yeah,
and these are people that, because we weren't just a landscape company to them, we were like the kids they got to watch grow up. So now they're 70, and we were cutting their lawns when they're 50, and they were the new CEO of it, whatever big oil company it was, and we were there helping them so they could go golfing, and they'd come home and we'd be cutting their grass, but one guy would be taking shots at their kids, showing them how to do a wrist shot, right?
No way, just all those.
Yeah. Oh yeah, we used to cut all these houses, so we called it the swim day on Friday, so we divided up between Lake Bonavista, Lake Bonaventure, and I forgot, I think it was Midnapore. So every crew got to cut a certain amount of houses that were on the lake, and then everybody would swim. And there's all these kids, were cutting their lawns. They're like, it's the landscape guys. And they're just all pumped up. And, I once got a picture of one of our guys. There's just these young kids, and they were excited because this guy had, played junior. And I think he was playing for Brandon Wheat Kings. And he was actually an out player. These kids just wanted to meet him. For some reason, they knew who he was. I don't know if they were from Winnipeg or somewhere out in Manitoba. And so he shows up, and these kids are just in awe. And he's like, And they had just give me that goal equipment. So he went and had these kids are taking slap shots on him. And I looked around like, we're supposed to be cutting grass.
What is happening right now?
But you know what? These residential clients got to know us as just a great group of people.
Yeah.
But for us, it was just, it had evolved, and some of these relationships are just so long in the tooth. And it was getting to the point where, because of the work we were doing for municipalities and governments, the amount of safety that we had to do, the amount of training, the insurance costs,
right.
When we pulled that down onto a residential level, it just made it unaffordable for us to charge the prices. So instead of just trying to just keep increasing prices in a market where there's very few barriers to entry in a residential, I just said, let's just exit with honor and grace and just be honest and just say, hey, we can't charge you what we need to charge. It's not fair. And so we have a great list of subcontractors now that they're not even subcontractors, we just refer them. And we've got some great people that we pass on residential clients to. Yeah.
So now it's the municipalities this is where ULS is today.
So we've evolved. Yeah, we've evolved where we're mostly looking at municipal contracts, government contracts, and large portfolio holders. So, we just signed a big deal with EPCOR. We look after NMAX, ADCO, tons of different municipalities and counties that we do work for, governments and different things like that. We're actually bidding on Parliament Hill this week.
No way.
Yeah. So
wild.
Yeah,
which goes back to this, when I kind of preface it, when your parents decide to go across Canada. Yeah. This is where you are now. Yeah. Which is, it's a big thing, and the acquisition piece, obviously, I know a little bit, but do you still have a vision? Do you still have a vision? Are you still like, can you see where you want to go still?
Well, whether I had a vision or not, it doesn't really matter anymore, because in 2019, we sold off 79% of the company to private equity. So it changed a lot of things. Some for the better, some for the worse. But I think, really the whole dynamics of where we're going now is like, it's so much more thought out. And we do have a vision of where we're going, and it's pretty big. Yep. In 2019, it was just one company. Then we acquired Citywide Towing. It was actually already there. They kind of merged ULS and Citywide Towing. Also, we had this tow truck company, which was just strange. And then we started to have acquisitions. So, now, we have Calgary, Red Deer, Edmonton, Saskatoon, Regina, Ottawa. We service Gatineau and Hull. And we have an LOI out on a company in the GTA just outside of Toronto. They have three locations. And we'll be buying probably 3 more companies in Toronto within the next 24 months. So we went from basically around a $30 million company. We'll probably be around 100 this year, and rapidly, like over 20 months. So it's been pretty crazy ride.
So before the private equity play, when you're making those moves, is it you just like you and a team? Is it like, where are you coming up with the vision to get this thing to go to that scale? Is it just, we're just moving forward?
Well, I used to have this thing called, so I came up with this 50M thinking. So I'd like have Post-its and I'd stick them on walls or write them on whiteboards in the office, or finish off an email with 50M thinking. And everyone's like, what is this? And we used to have these town halls, and I was just goating everybody. I knew somebody was going to ask me, right? Because we have a Q&A at the end. I was like, Steve, what's this 50M thinking? And I said, it's $50 million thinking. We have to build this company like we're a $50 million company. And we were probably about $25 million at the time. And so really that's, when you get to that 30 million plus, that's where your company would be called what's called a hyper-sized company. So at 30 million and, maybe even 25, 50 million, you become a hyper-sized company. And so that means you have to have every one of the disciplines like HR, accounting, you have to have a great sales team. So all this stuff it moves from small business, like 30 million is your entry into the big leagues, right? Yeah. And people don't realize this, and it's just a staggering number. But, I would always ask people, how many $30 million revenue companies do you think there's in the U.S.? People are like, oh, there's millions of them. No, there's not. There's slightly over 11,000 $30 million revenue companies in the U.S. And there's millions and millions of companies. Most companies are small business. That's why when you hear, governments talk about we have to support small business, small business, small business. Yeah. So, that 0 to $1 million is 90% of all businesses in North America. And then you get up from, let's say, 1 million to 30 million. Well, that's the other 9.9%. Yeah. And over 30 million, it's just there's a book out there called Scaling Up. And if you read that, it talks about how these companies scale up. When you get to that 30 million, so I was always thinking like, when I thought of 50M thinking, I thought, we need to build the platforms and the processes to run a $50 million company.
So like the process, that could be infrastructure on the people side, just like getting people in the right, so everything can scale up and it doesn't get
Exactly.
bottlenecked.
So how we can scale. So here we are at 25 or 30 million. So how do we build it so we can just keep going? Because that 30 million is just about adding revenue. And then you start to go, well, we've got enough systems and everything to handle 30 million. So we just replicate, right? So you might have, a sales team of 5. Now you need a sales team of 10. Then you need a sales team of 20. So everything just starts to, it's just a growth within divisions as opposed to adding on positions, right? You've got everybody. Like at 30 million, you have to have a full-time HR person or you're crazy. And you need full-time safety people. We got like 4 of them. That's all they do every day. Safety, be safe, right? So, when I thought of that, we were really good at building processes and systems. And that's why I think the private equity was attracted to us, right? So how can we take ULS and start plugging on more revenue? And so that's kind of what attracted them. And it was really serendipitous. Like, it wasn't like I was a thoughtful planning, but, I was starting to think about how do I start to exit out and how do I transition this business? Because my biggest fear was, how do I leave a business and let all these people stay here? And I have literally, we have 800 employees now. So, at the time we had 290 and all of a sudden I shut it down to get my money. I want to sell off assets and shut down a business that's been around for almost 30 years. So at the time for me, it was about how do I create opportunity and how do I create a business that, I always told a story at work is that my goal, everyone's like, Steve, what's your goal? I said, this is my goal. You can just call me a bullshitter. Here's my goal. One day I want to be sitting in an old folks home, shitting my diaper with my buddy Frank. And Frank's like, Steve, you just shit your diaper. And I'm like, Frank, I did just shit my diaper. You see that guy mowing out there with the ULS shirt on? I started that company in 1999. And then in 1989. And then Frank looks at me and goes, not only did you shit yourself, you're full of shit. That old guy banter? And then I got to try to convince Frank that I actually started it. And no matter what I say, he's just going to think of me
totally
as an 82-year-old. Delusional, bed shitter. And so, but to me, that became the vision. Like, how do I move away, offer opportunity, and let this thing keep going? And there's not a lot of other ways to do it, right? So partnering with private equity allowed me to remove some of my equity out of the business and still keep it sustainable. So that for me was the decision. It's a completely different feeling now for me, and a completely different way to do business.
Before, when you, right when you were, when you were like 10 to 30 million, does it still feel like, are you still like your personality and whether it's beer boxes and swimming Fridays and all these little things, was that still in the DNA at that size of business, or do those moments start to dissipate because the company's just getting so big and there's more processes in place?
Well, I think that, as a business grows and you start adding layers of regulation and policies and procedures, it does strip away a little bit of fun. I don't think you can have a 300-person company and it's like people say, they always talk about culture. And I was a big culture guy. In 2016, I got voted in for one of the top 40 entrepreneurs. So I went to the Ivy School of Business. I got a fellowship there for the Quantum Shift program. So it was just 40 of the top entrepreneurs from Canada, whether we were or not, but we got in there. And we sat around for a week at Ivy School of Business. And it was from 6 a.m. till midnight. It was one of the most grueling things I've ever done. And, I got kind of chosen because, this kind of cultural piece, like, Steve's kind of the culture guy. And, I've always been big on company culture and watching how that evolves.
Just naturally? Just grow, where does that, a lot of people won't go to culture first or top of mind, but what took you there?
Well, I think, it's just, I never wanted to, be the captain, but, when I played junior, I was a captain until Don Phelps cut the C off my jersey. And, and I think that, the way I like to lead people is just like, I think there's two ways that I see people lead. Well, there's a number of ways, but most people, when they kind of come to the epitome of a leadership role, they say, he's so motivating. Like, wow, all the motivation. I think motivation is kind of like one step down away from the supreme leader. Like, motivation to me on the very low end is you take a stick and you hit somebody in the head And that motivates them to do shit, right? Like, if you don't do this, I'm going to hit you. That's motivating. And then at the very top end of the motivation, it would be like the, you'll usually see it on a YouTube thing where you get the, the college football guy that gives the good speech.
Yep. The rah-rah.
Yeah, the rah-rah. That's like, that was really good speeches, and you've heard them because they almost become legendary. That's a top level of motivation. And then the bottom level of motivation is hitting and screaming and yelling and pushing and badgering, belittling, tricking, manipulating, whatever. It's just, it's not really that good at leadership. Then get away from all that. The person that can lead the best it leads by inspiration. So they don't have to say a lot, but people follow them for a different reason. They're inspired by what they do. They're inspired by what they say. They're inspired by the way they handle situations. That person can sit there and talk in a very mundane way. Might be somewhat animated, but they get their point across. And people, they gravitate to these type of people, and they're inspirational. Like, I don't think Gandhi, started to whack people or even screamed that much. He stood there, sat there cross-legged, and billions of people decided to follow him, right? And you look back through history, words are very powerful. And then you put words with a certain amount of action. It's like, it's like the old baking soda and vinegar when you're in grade 12 and you're doing the experiments or whatever it was, probably grade 7. And it's hard. So what I always say to people is try to inspire people. Don't cut yourself short and just think you have to motivate them. Like, how are you going to really inspire them? Right. So and because you played hockey, like, what was more inspirational, or what got you going? The guy on the bench yelling at you, come on, let's go. Or the guy that I always had the guy on the team, and I was kind of like that. My brother used to say, hey, you talk a lot, but in hockey it's scary because you don't say a lot.
Just do.
And I used to always say, don't ever be scared of the guys that are yipping. Be scared of the guys that aren't yipping.
Exactly.
Right? And you watch that guy and he just goes through the wall, shift after shift. And you watch that whole bench just come up. We're going to do that. And the guy that's yelling, they're like, shut up. We're going to do what this guy's doing because he's actually doing it, right? So that's kind of my difference in this, leaderships. Like, if you're a leader, try to replace that word motivation with inspiration. And I think it does a lot more for you.
And I think it's when you talk about the two sides of the spectrum, the stick and then like the over the top loud person, the inspirational side it's one of those ones. I don't think you can teach it, can you?
No.
It's just in you. Like, if you're going to lead with that, with inspiration driving it, it's just who you are.
Yeah, a lot of people, you see them like, oh, I'm going to go take this, motivational course, right? And I'm going to try to be a leader. And, I've seen a lot of, I don't know, we've probably had 3,000 or 4,000 people work there now. And it's like, it's weird. Like, I'll see a guy that's, and this is just, I'm just coming up with a number, but he's like, you got 300 employees and he's 100 down the depth chart. And he's out in the yard, but he's leading. Because everybody just follows this person. They watch what they do. If that guy, is having a great day, they're all having a great day. They want to be around that person, whether it's a male or a female. There's something about them, and it's so hard to put your finger on, but when you see it,
totally.
you can see it. It's
right
like
there.
A bolt of lightning. And if you can grab a hold of those people and get them into your company, they just make things happen, right?
How this is really interesting. How HR growing it, when were you hands-on for the bulk of the early years for hiring people and putting them in places, or?
Well, like I said, that when I was really involved in HR, it was easy because it was like, oh,
hockey?
I know that guy. I went and watched him play hockey, and so you're picking, and we usually, my theory when we first started ULS is the weirder the better. Like, we've had all these crazy people.
Well, you might riding around the truck all day. It's just like stories and crazy guys, and they work hard and
and even like, we just hired a bunch of younger guys this year, and I met one of their moms the other night at the golf course. I don't golf. I was just there for a celebration of life, and Mom said, oh yeah, I got Jake working here, and he just loved hanging out with your guys, the stories. And he said, Mom, it's like a real life sitcom all day. And they're laughing and having fun. And, I always say to people, when you're doing that type of work, the people you're riding with is more important than the work. Like you're just having fun. Like, working hard and telling stories and having fun and being outside. Like that's a good summer job, right? If you're a student,
Totally.
you know. Yeah,
to hire though, like how important was that to scale this thing? You know, like to find.
Oh, you know, if anybody if someone says, Steve, you did it all yourself, I just feel embarrassed. Yeah, great people, and a lot of long-term employees that are just hard, ask people who want to come to work, do a good job. We've all educated ourselves along the way.
Yep.
I've seen so much growth in the people that work at our company. It's fantastic. And now at the size we are, now we're hiring, industry experts from certain areas. Like, it used to be mostly hire internally, and we still really try to do that. We've got a development program we're starting at U of C in January, where we have kind of for mid-managers, like actually a business kind of management course we're putting them through with case studies on ULS. It's super cool.
Awesome.
So we've just templated that out with U of C. But, now there's positions for, like, we have 5 CPAs working for us now. You know what I mean? Like, so if you're an accounting person and you're going to school, working in the summer for us, usually it's the first 2 years, and then they go articling somewhere and they hate it. And they say, Steve, I hate this. I'd rather cut grass. Like, well, you got to do it to get your CPA, eventually. So, but now we have we have CFOs, we have not that I put a lot of worth in it. We've got 2 MBAs, but that's the type of people now that we're hiring too. Yeah. So it's good now because you can come here when you're 18 years old and cut grass or build a retaining wall or plow snow. And if you really want my job, I'll show you the 28,000 steps it takes to get there. Yeah. And let's start walking together, right? So this development and this opportunity that's offered, it's there now. So that for me is exciting to see. Super cool. Yeah.
Cool. It's interesting you bring up the Frank story. It's kind of that legacy play, right?
Yeah.
Which all of a sudden, when these youngsters are coming to cut lawns and then they turn into whatever, like the opportunity is probably, they're smart and hardworking. I'm sure it's pretty deep in your company.
I know it's going to be time to leave when I start hiring kids' grandkids.
Well, then you're in trouble. just walk.
It's so funny because I get all these, people that worked there before and now their kids are working there. And it's so weird because it's like, you just look like Ray, Ray Carter, but you're Ray Carter Jr. Like, it's like, I'm living the same life again, right? They show up in our training room or whatever. It's awesome.
Do you see a lot of the new hires?
Well, we have like a border with glass. And so and there's like it's kind of embarrassing, but they have this like, kind of a welcome video about Steve and some of his stuff. And I'll go by and I usually just kind of look through the window and then just walk in and say something completely ridiculous, right? Because even though we become pretty corporate, I want people to understand that, if you're not having fun in life, you got to figure out something else, right? Like, I just look at people and I did some horrible jobs, like, up north doing things. And I was always like, as long as I had somebody to talk to all day and goof around with, like whether it was singing songs or telling dumb jokes, like 12 hours of work's over. Yeah. Like I'm just checking out. I'm planting trees or laying seismic line in Saskatchewan for 2 months. But the stuff I saw and the stories and the people I met, like that's what life's about. So, get out of wallowing in the shit and get your head up and understand that, hey, there's some peanuts in there too, right? Along the way. So
totally. And do you, when you onboard these people and they're sitting in the boardroom watching the welcome video, whoever's running that meeting, they're trying to instill some of these, these like DNA pieces, of just how this business is, how it was built and how it runs. And
we're having a summit actually here in Calgary. Was supposed to be next week at the Calgary Public Library in those think tank rooms. And so one on HR and one in sales. And we had like a certain amount of people come from every office across Canada, but because of the COVID restrictions that got put on us last Monday, we're going to have to do it virtually. But the HR is going to be a big challenge for every company. I mean, you hear it on the news every day, right? Like whether it's restaurants or they can't find anybody, right? And some of that's a combination of subsidies, and as they kind of go away, that'll get a bit better. But some of it is the world's starting to change now, right? I often joke around, I want to write a book called The Rise of the Blue Collar, and it kind of...
Would you ever?
Well, yeah.
Would you ever? Could you, could someone ghostwrite a book for you?
Well, I could write it myself, I think. But, the rise of the blue collar worker goes like this. Hi, this is Dr. Smith. I got a couple bricks loose on my chimney. Can you come and fix it? No problem. That's $995 an hour. I'll be over there in a while. Right? Like who's going to do all this work? We've got aging infrastructure. We've got cities falling apart. Everybody wants more green space, but you can't just build green space and not look after it. And you have more and more people that think, a good profession is sitting in an office and pounding on a keypad.
Yeah.
So you've got a mass amount of people moving away from this type of work, but the demand for this type of work is increasing. How do you look after houses? How do you, I did a talk at Springbank High. It was a long time ago, but they were asking about, I said I gave them the C's get degrees. They probably shouldn't have done. One kid said, "You get a C, you can't even get into university." But anyway, I said, "Okay, time to change." And I kind of said, if I had advice to give, is like, get a trade and then go get a 2-year business admin degree.
You're dangerous.
Because you wait one day, this young person who can manage a business and offer blue collar services, like, hey, try to get your furnace fixed right now. Phone up and try to get concrete done. Try to get new siding on your house right now. There's houses still from that hail damage are sitting there that happened a year and a half, 2 years ago, and they're going to not get fixed for 2 more years. So, the world is a funny place when people don't understand. Like, I went to Italy once and just marveled at the rock work and the masonry work, and these guys have been masons their whole life. It's an art.
Yep.
And it's a dying art.
For sure.
Looking after everything, right?
I agree.
So, yeah.
Super cool, Weedy. Like I said, I've known you a long time. Never really, had some beers and played hockey against each other, but never really sat down. So this was a cool one for me to have. There's only one question I ask the guests. Yeah. And it's when I say Calgary, where does your head go?
Home. Yeah. It's my home here. Grew up here, played junior hockey here, played college hockey here, built a great business. Super excited about being part of the fact that, Urban Life Solutions head office for all of Canada is Calgary, right? So, I used to get bugged by all my guys on my team because 99% were in the oil patch, grass cutter and everything. And, the head office for an 800 going to 2,000 person companies in Calgary, and based on providing outdoor services and an environmentally conscious company, I just think that, when I think of Calgary and just being here, and I've traveled all over the world, and this is home.
Super cool, man.
Yep.
I know you're a busy dude, so thanks for making the time. I really appreciate it.
That was awesome. This is great.
Yeah, I'm sure we'll catch up soon, but thank you again.
Yeah, cheers.
Yeah, man.